I'm Steve Taylor, your host. Today I'm joined by Peter and Brandon from TruGrid. Welcome, guys. How's it going?
We're doing great, Steve. It's
Doing good.
good
Thanks
to be
for
back
asking.
again.
Awesome. So I'm going to pop Peter on here. I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a little bit. Peter, if you could kind of fill everybody in on your background and what TruGrid is.
For sure. I have been in technology, I'd say since my daughter was born, so maybe before that. So that would be around 88 is when I've been in technology. And so that comes at about 33 years now. And in the span of that, I've done other things, but my specialization really has been on remote access, especially in the enterprise. So one of my expertise is there's a technology that's used by a lot of enterprises called Citrix. So that's my expertise. So I've done Citrix implementation, very complex ones for some of the largest organizations in the world.
Nice.
Yeah, some of them. I mean, I've done 50,000 seats implementation of Citrix for, those companies should be, they should remain nameless for obvious reasons, but very large ones and across the United States. And I've actually done it on behalf of Citrix itself, where I've been sent to Canada, to South America, even US government agencies. And so what I learned in the span of those is and I even started a consulting firm that specialized in doing those things for large organizations. What I learned is that the mid-market space needs something like that, something like Citrix, but without the complexity and without the cost. So that's really how TruGrid came to be born. My current partner, Jason Hayes, who's my co-founder, is a developer by background. So he and I were talking about 5 years ago, and I was just jokingly saying, I love this Citrix stuff. It's very good, but it requires a lot of technical knowledge and expertise, and there's a lot of complexity involved. Wouldn't it be nice if we had one for the mid-market and for service providers? And he jokingly said, well, Peter, you're the expert. I'm a developer. I think we could do this. So jokingly, we said, well, let's do what they call MVP. MVP is minimally viable product. So within 3 months, we had a semblance of a technology that could do what Citrix does, except do it very quickly and without the technical knowledge required to, and also without the complexity. And that's pretty much why we say, let's incorporate this company and let's focus on mid-market companies and service providers that really don't want complexity. They just want to be able to just click a few buttons and get something running. So one decision we made was we surveyed the landscape and we realized that Microsoft RDP is the most prevalent remote access protocol in the Windows world. And we said there was really no need for us to go and develop a whole new protocol. Let's just leverage RDP and, fill in the gaps and remove all the security issues that are attendant with RDP. Another decision we made early on was two-factor or multi-factor authentication will be a requirement of the technology. And that's kind of the way it is today. So nobody can use our technology without MFA. So if you kind of think about most technology today, like even Office 365, you'd have to go in and enable MFA after the fact. With our technology, when you log in the first time, you'll be required to set up MFA, much like you go to the bank and you want to log in, they send you a code. In this case, it's a token code, but MFA is required. So in our case, security is a default posture. You have to go through pains to reverse that, as opposed to you enable a technology and you have to go secure it. We cannot take the opposite approach. Secure it first and make it easy. So in other words, try to make security easy to use, not necessarily complex. And that's pretty much our story.
That's awesome.
That's how we started. Yeah.
Thank you for that. How about we put Brandon in the hot seat now? Brandon, how about you, sir? How did you kind of get started in all this? What's your background?
My background actually originated in sales. I think in high school, I was selling TVs at Circuit City. And then it turned from that into working on cars, doing like stereo stuff, and then custom car stereo stuff. And then it ultimately led to building police cars. So I built police cars for quite a few years. I worked a lot with Panasonic. They do camera systems and tough books and tablets and stuff. So I kind of specialized in that area. And then I had started my own business quite a few years back. And due to some unfortunate circumstances, I was on a river in Chicago area, and it got flooded, and basically all of my customers that with the boats and stuff that I was supposed to be working on, their houses were underwater for about 8 months. So business did not go too well. And then I met our VP of sales, Jennifer, and I had mentioned to her that I wanted to take a little bit of time off work. And she we talked about my background with the Panasonic stuff. And she worked at Panasonic for a long time. She had very big accounts and did very well there. So she thought that I could hang in the technology industry. So she introduced me to Peter, and we kind of jumped into a show right off the bat, and we haven't looked back. So
It's true.
So that's pretty much where it is. My background's in sales and working on cars, but the little bit of Panasonic and different technology that went into police cars actually kind of got me to where I'm at today. And actually, now that I'm finding out, we actually sell our product TruGrid to police departments so they can access the department from their tough books. So it all kind of went in a big circle.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. So when I think of technology like this, I guess I don't think of the end user. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always thinking about things from the IT guy's perspective. So
Yeah.
I see how this could be helpful for kind of everyone. So Brandon, it sounds like you are more sales focused here at TruGrid. Peter is probably, I don't know if technical is the right term because you're not the programmer per se, but
I am actually very involved in product development.
Good.
So what I truly bring to the table is simplifying the delivery of our technology. In fact, I'm so anal about it, where we've delayed product release if it's not sufficiently easy enough that we think our customers can do it with a few clicks. Developers don't always think about simplicity. Not all of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I come in. So I'm able to lay over my technical background with knowing how complex it is and knowing how simple it could be. So I kind of show examples to our development team so that I can say, no, this is actually how we want it. We want it to be only 2 steps, 3 steps, not 15 steps. And so I'm very technical in that regard. I don't write the code, but I actually get involved in the actual implementation of our stuff.
So one thing that you just mentioned was developers don't always think. Now,
Well,
I know, hear me out. So when it comes to that, because they're thinking about the code, not
Yes.
what the user interface or user experience is going to be.
Exactly.
So what kind of examples can you think of in general with development, not just with your product and not necessarily to point out flaws in other products and bash them, but like, what kind of flaws can you think of when you think developers don't always think?
Well, so I'll say they don't think about simplicity that much. Well, no, some do, but I don't think it's kind of natural because remember, it turns out that we all know this, the field of computer system is so broad and wide, right? So my twin brother, for example, I have a twin. He's a programmer as well. He used to work for Microsoft. He's in technology on that side. I'm on this side. You'd be amazed the things they ask me about networking. Like, so Steve, I know you own your own MSP. So networking is like the back of your hand, right? It's same for me. But my brother's a coder. He worked for Microsoft, besides his own business, doing software stuff. And yet I have to explain and simplify networking for him, right?
Sure.
So when you look at it from that standpoint, it takes the marriage of someone that knows the other side, how things are interconnect, to be able to work with the developers team who may not know how things are interconnected. They know how to code applications that work on Windows. They know how to code complexity that you and I cannot think about. So it takes the marriage of both to be able to do things meaningfully. So I'll give an example. When we were implementing our Azure AD, so we now support Azure. The last time we talked, it wasn't ready. So we had told you that it would be ready. It actually been ready about 6 weeks ago. During the development cycle of that, the way we do things in our company is when we come up with an idea, the development team work with the PM, they come up with a position paper of how it's going to be done. They laid it out for us. And myself and our CTO, we reviewed it and I was aghast at how complex it was going to be. all this SAML stuff. And I said, no, I don't want my customer to even know what SAML is. I want him to be just click a button, log into Azure AD, and you do all the work for them. So go ahead.
So I just want to clarify, SAML is still required. You just don't want the end user, the person using it all day long, to have to figure out what the heck you're talking about to make that kind of stuff happen.
Exactly. Then I also find go ahead, Steve.
And I think that's a solid approach. I mean,
Yes.
If you think about it, that's like the Apple approach. There's a lot of complexity to the things that they have set up. Look at AirShare, I believe they were calling it, although they just pulled it from the latest beta 6, but they'll re-implement it later on down the road in iOS 15 after it's already been launched. So they were going to do that thing where you could be like on a FaceTime call with somebody and you could watch like the same YouTube video or Netflix show or something along those lines together and see it at the exact same time. And there's a lot that has to go into that for you two to have that show happening in sync at, kind of the same time on your phones.
Yep.
And to be able to have a two-way video audio conversation with the person or people that you are, in a FaceTime chat with. But we don't care how the watch is made. We just want to know what time it is.
Exactly.
So
in fact, Steve, if I may, can I add something real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good thing you kind of mentioned Apple. You believe it or not, when we started TruGrid, it was an experience with my daughter and the iPod. It was actually the precursor to the iPhone. So we had told her that if she got certain grades, we will buy an iPod. Well, she did. She actually exceeded that. And she actually was the first girl to have an iPod in her class, she told me. Well, when the iPod arrived, we were sitting at the kitchen table and I took out the instruction manual. There's a little pamphlet that came with it. And I was going through it like you and I would do, Steve. Like, we're very technical. We have to read instructions and everything else. Well,
yeah, I don't do that.
Well, I do it because I'm very technical. Well, my daughter, I looked over at her and she was already swinging to the music. There was some sample music on the iPod and she already got everything all connected. And she had never used iPod before. Yeah. That experience actually changed things for me. Like, oh my God, look at this. Here I am trying to look at the instruction manual, trying to figure it out. And she's already just took it out, put the buds in the ears and listened to music.
And to be fair, she was probably able to get like, I'll call it 90% of the way. There are some nuances, some like things that are deeper within that you probably understood thanks to reading the manual. But as far as, I have music on here and I'm going to listen, you're right. It should be as simple as a child can take it out of the package and plug the earbuds in, put them in their ear and listen.
I agree with you. So that kind of simplicity is what we try very hard to bring to TruGrid. We spend more time on simplifying what our customers leverage and use more than anything else. Very important to us.
Yeah, we actually just released another feature as far as simplicity where you can log into the connector and then actually copy the desktop or application and put it on your desktop. So you have a shortcut on your desktop. So now you just click that little computer on your desktop and you're in your session.
Yeah. And when we get to it, Steve, I'll give you the background on that one. That's a security thing about what Brandon just said. And I like to explain that at the right time.
Well, let's talk about security for a moment. So how do I want to take this? Because there's so many ways we could go, right?
Yes.
So let's look at this from the MSP perspective. Okay. So there's probably several use cases for an MSP to have a product like this. Definitely. Use case number one, and I'll just say me for simplicity, right? So use case number one, I want to be able to remotely connect to my clients. Ideally, I can do Windows and Mac. Can you do Mac?
You can connect from your Mac to Windows. All of our systems actually remote connect to Windows services.
Okay.
This is what we offer. Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Yeah.
So I want to remotely connect to Windows computers, and I want to do it securely, and I want it to be easy, so that as long as I've got the product deployed, all I have to do is press a couple things, because if I'm connecting, it's because a customer has a problem.
Pretty much, yes.
So how do you sell TruGrid to me? What's your pitch?
Sure. So in the use case you've explained, the typical implementation for that from MSP is where many of them don't come to us for that initially. They come to us because they have customers that want to do remote access. And for a reason we talk about, VPN has bit them in the butt. So they look for a different solution. But once they get in, they realize, oh, I can actually use your system to connect to the client systems as well, or the servers and stuff, without trampling on my other techs. So the best use case that people come to us with for their own internal use, just like you expressed, is when they have typically more than one tech, where when you use a remote control product like Screen Connect or Kaseya and that kind of stuff, there are remote, or even TeamViewer and LogMeIn. These are console-based remote login, right? So what happens is when somebody's logged in, that person owns that console. If that screen is not locked, even if I log in, Steve, as my own tech admin account, I'm actually going to just trample on your console because the screen is unlocked. And so there's an integrity issue there. If you have an environment where when a tech makes a change, you want to know who makes a change, and you don't want people sharing login and password. So in those instances, an RDP solution is a better fit, only because the default posture of RDP is privacy. So every session is private. It's impossible for another user to log in and see what the other user is doing. Whereas on the console, basically TeamViewer and LogMeIn and Screen Connect, those are the default posture because they're console based. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that there's anything wrong with those products. Just because they are remote control product, not remote session product, that's pretty much how they behave. So to answer your question, the situation where you will leverage TruGrid for remote control, remote access for MSP work is if you want speed, because RDP is the fastest protocol around when it comes to connecting to Windows environment, faster than Screen Connect, Kaseya, remote access, TeamViewer, anything you have out there. So
that's why is that?
Because for one thing, it's actually built into Windows, built into the kernel Windows. It's unlike, there's no agent you have to install to enable the RDP. It's actually built in. And I think the product is also, if you look at the codec that's built into RDP, it's actually much very robust. There was a time when, in my world, when I was doing Citrix, there was always a joke that, RDP is so, useless, you can never use it. Well, it's now very feature comparative to Citrix HDS protocol, or even VMware Horizon Blast, which is protocol that are used in enterprise, even for people doing CAD and things of that nature. So there's remote FX. RDP has a superset called remote FX. It's enabled by default when you have certain things in place using Windows 2000 Server 2012 R2 or higher, and Windows 10 or even Windows 8. You could use remote FX, and you don't have to do anything special. As long as the right conditions are met, RDP will superset itself to remote FX, and you experience an even better performance. So people don't think about it because Microsoft just built it in as a very simple system to employ. So to cycle back, MSPs have multiple choices when it comes to remote control or remoting to servers to support them. They can use any of the system already built into their preferred RMM if it's built in, or as in most cases, many RMMs don't have a built-in remote control product. They latch onto, Screen Connect, or, Kaseya has one now. I think Synchro probably has its own built-in, but you can actually bring in a Screen Connect. And then you have RDP. Many people don't think about RDP because it's difficult to secure it natively, right? Steve, that's one of the reasons why that you and I talk about when we first met last time. You were joking at me and said, "Oh, who uses RDP nowadays?" And it is true. Who will use RDP in its natural state, where you have to open up ports, right? Open up ports is a no, 3389. It doesn't matter if you change the port. It also doesn't matter if you even put 443 on top of it, because then that website, if there's no MFA, it could be compromised if login is stolen. That's what we bring to the table. So we make, by using TruGrid TruGrid is like a Cloudflare to RDP. So in other words, you don't have to be exposed. No inbound firewall. Nobody knows you exist, right? You connect through a secure connector on your laptop or your remote device, and you have MFA. So by implementing TruGrid, we've given MSP another option to use to connect to their remote systems. And we also have federation built in, meaning that if you're a service provider, you have multiple engineers, and you have tens or hundreds of customers, each of your engineer can uniquely log into the customer systems with their own Office 365 or the company Active Directory without you having to create an account for each tech at each customer. We federate it for you, and it's single sign-on too. So basically, if I'm an MSP right now, Brandon and I will work for the same MSP, and we have 100 clients that we serve. The two of us, we can log into the TruGrid for our MSP company, and we can see all the different systems for the different MSPs. And when Brandon clicks the button, it will single sign on in to the server he wants to support. When I do the same, I'll have my own session. He can have his own session, doing his own thing. I'm doing my own thing. And when I leave the company, all the owner of the MSP has to do is just disable my account in our company Active Directory, and it's done. So this is the thing we built in. So many MSP, they have to share credentials when they're remote into customer system, which is actually unsafe. And it's too much work to create unique account for me and Brandon at 100 clients. That's why they share accounts. With TruGrid, you don't have to do any of those things.
I like that. So I have two questions. And my first one, I feel like we need to, I'm going to say, roll it back. Okay.
Yes, I agree with
So let's take this back to fundamentals for a moment.
Yes.
Can we explain, because with a lot of these IT guys that are out there right now, they're probably a bunch that are in their late teens, early 20s, and they don't truly understand the difference because they never needed to use RDP, right?
That's true.
Everything's in the cloud. Like if I think about myself, like I haven't had a client in nearly a decade where they were doing anything remote desktop. They didn't even have a server, let alone remote desktop. They all had laptops so they could take their work with them. They didn't have to log into a workstation. So explain the difference between an RDP session and a remote control session.
Good. So RDP session it's actually when you log into a remote machine and you have unique session on that. So let's say there's a Windows PC in the office. So, and a case in point is during the pandemic last year when things happened, there are a lot of companies, believe it or not, Steve, where some employees, they're 9 to 5, they don't do anything they don't do any company work when they leave the office and go home. So for that reason, their companies have chosen to buy PCs, that's fixed function PCs for them, right? So all their work actually is done when they sit in front of that PC and connect to the network and do things. For those customers, there was no provision for laptops for them. So when the pandemic struck and the workflow allows itself for them to work remotely, the companies were faced with a choice. Do I buy laptops for these people now to now connect to their PC, or should I let them use their personal devices from home and just connect to their PC and do the work? Many chose that approach, which is don't waste your money on a laptop. But then if I'm going to allow them to use their personal devices, I don't want to give them VPN because I don't control what's on the laptop at home. I don't control the home Wi-Fi. And they were looking for solutions that would allow RDP to remote systems without trusting the remote device and without VPN. And
laptops weren't available for a while last year.
Laptops weren't available because it was a scramble. That was one use case. That's how people find us. So RDP is for me to do my work privately. So when I log into the remote computer, so in this case, when those home users were home during the pandemic using their personal devices, even iPad, tablets, and whatnot, and they logged into their PC in the office, that entire session was private because that's the default posture of RDP. They didn't have to worry that somebody in the office could be walking around, go to their monitor and see what they're doing. The same privacy that's implied when they're in the office, the monitor facing them, was what they got, okay? That's what RDP is. RDP session is always private by default. Okay. In fact, it's actually very difficult to make it not private. Remote control, on the other hand, is primarily if I'm going to support somebody, right? So it gives me a console as if I'm sitting in front of the machine so that I can share it with you. So Steven, you and I could be your client and I call you for support. And I say, so I can't figure out how this Microsoft Word is working. You couldn't see my screen with RDP. You'd have to do a remote control like Screen Connect, TeamViewer, Log Me In. Those are remote control or remote console product. So you'd have to ask my permission to allow you to see my screen. And then I say yes, then my screen is transposed on yours. And then you move your mouse, I can see what you're doing. When I move my mouse, you can see what I'm doing. That's remote control and remote console. That's the difference between that and RDP. So RDP is, when you think RDP, private session, always private. Remote control, not so much.
Excellent. And earlier you also mentioned that TruGrid is like Cloudflare, but for RDP. So yes. I use Cloudflare. I even use them as the registry domain registration, the registrant. Super affordable. You just can't actually register there yet. You can only import.
You can import, you can host DNS and stuff, yes.
Yes. So when I enable what do they call it? It's either DNS only or when you're passing it through Cloudflare.
Many people they will hide their 443 server behind Cloudflare. Yeah. So when you create your DNS for access from outside, the DNS points to an IP address owned by Cloudflare.
I guess I was just trying to think, when you're going through and you're setting up the DNS, there's the gray cloud and the orange cloud. And I never remember what they call the orange cloud. I'm going to look real quick because it's going to bother me if I don't. But anyway, the orange cloud, what happens is Cloudflare knows what your IP address is and what it's supposed to be. But if you, even knowing what the IP is supposed to be, if you were to ping your domain, if it's an orange cloud, it's not going to show that IP address. It's going to show some generic IP address. And basically it's creating a proxy. That's what they're calling it. It's creating a proxy between the end user and the content or the server, whatever you want to refer to it as. So it seems as though a couple things are happening. First, you guys are creating a proxy between the end user and the RDP device.
RDP destination, the host, yes.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
So that way, even if somebody nefarious figured out something, all they would be getting is kind of, essentially the Cloudflare address instead of the real server location.
From a security standpoint, that's the way to look at it now. I would say actually in the case of RDP, they won't even see anything because, and let me explain the reason why. In the case you mentioned with Cloudflare, right? Even though it's a proxy, but you still want customers to access the website that you're hosting, right? In that case, you publish a DNS name that points to the public IP. Our case is it's still doing the proxy, except nobody knows anything. There's no IP that anybody has to point to. It's only our client. We have this secure connector that you have to install on your device. Only that guy knows how to get to you. In the case of when you're Cloudflaring a website, it's a publicly available user browser to access it. So when I say we're Cloudflare for RDP, only in the sense that we're a proxy. Nothing's ever exposed. In the case of Cloudflare, you still have to expose an IP address that people see in the public, even though there's something in the backend that they don't see, right? That they don't see is where we come in for RDP. And the only way you can connect to it through our connector, private connector.
So that's really interesting. So that's a good point. Because they're using the software, and my allergies are going crazy today. I'm so sorry. Because you're using software on the end user computer, they don't see, I'm sure they could do Wireshark or something, and they could see where the connections are going. Somebody intelligent could see at least the proxy address, I assume. Is there a proxy address involved still?
There's some DNS names. So to do that though, whoever is doing that has to be on the machine that's making a connection. So somebody has to hack your machine, have some sort of malware there, monitoring your traffic. At that point, you have a whole different problem, right? If somebody can install malware on your machine and monitor all your traffic, that's a whole different level of,
No, and I guess what I was implying there is if the end user were smart enough, they could probably figure out the proxy address.
That is true.
From the end user machine, could they figure out the actual destination address?
No, they cannot.
Okay, because it's going through that proxy.
It's going to that proxy. They can figure out what the proxy is, but they don't know where it's being proxied to.
Sure. Yeah. So then let's take this the next step further. How are you getting through the firewall onto the destination?
I'm so happy you asked. So in an Active Directory environment, so let's say you have an organization that wants to use TruGrid to connect to multiple computers, right? Let's just use it for the sake of conversation, 50 computers. There's a broker software that you have to install on-premise. That can go on any member server, any server joined to Active Directory. For small environments, it can be a domain controller. For larger environments, they would dedicate one or two servers or use, a server that's used for something else that's not overloaded. They'll put the TruGrid Sentry software on it. That Sentry software does a reverse proxy to something called Cloud Shield. So that Cloud Shield is our Cloudflare. Okay. There's a unique registration for every customer. That is how the Sentry knows what Cloud Shield instance to connect to. Okay. And then when I'm at home, when I log in as my UPN, Peter at whatever domain.com, immediately that login knows what my Cloud Shield is. That's how we make the connection. So Sentry is there waiting for a request. And I'm going to be the one making that request. So when I log into my software, that TruGrid software on my desktop, I will see the PC or the application that's been assigned to me. When I click it, I'm telling the proxy to let Sentry know that I need access. Out of bounds, Sentry will come out and handshake with me. It doesn't go through that same connection because, to answer your question, because there's no inbound port now, on your firewall, Sentry will be the one coming out. And so the Cloud Shield software would tell both of us to go and connect over a unique IP for 20 seconds. Once that bond is formed, it stays connected. So we do this without any firewall port being opened on either side. And we have a diagram. If you go to TruGrid.com/security, you will see that diagram. I can talk through it if you want.
I actually think I understand what you just said, but I want to explore this a little further and make sure we're all understanding it. Definitely. So you said that we install, I'm going to call it an agent. Okay.
Yes,
So we install an agent. It just has to go on a member server.
Yeah.
And so this is, sure. But a domain controller is still technically a member server of the domain. It just also is the admin of the domain, if you will.
You got it.
So it has to be on a server inside the domain.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing is this is almost like a hybrid agent system because you don't need an agent on every device. You just need an agent on a server. And the reason you need that is because that server has Active Directory running on it, and it's going to see all of the DNS connections that are happening within that facility. So that is how this is both agent and agentless. That's why I'm calling it hybrid.
Steve, you could have written this software. You could have, yeah. You nailed it on the head. Without even seeing that diagram, that's exactly how it works.
All right. Now, I do have a concern. So you mentioned that the server, the agent, is going to come out and it's going to talk to the Cloud Shield, and it's going to do an outbound connection. And then once the connection is established, a connection is a connection, and they'll just talk and they'll do their thing.
Exactly.
And the end user device is going to reach out and talk to Cloud Shield.
You got it.
So that's a point of failure.
In what sense?
Well, what if Cloud Shield goes down?
Cloud Shield is not one thing. It's a platform service. So Cloud Shield is not some virtual machine. It's a web service, and it runs on multiple systems in Azure. Okay. So in other words, Yeah, so as a web service, even though there's an instance for each customer, those instances can shift. So I give an example. I'm not sure who's familiar with Microsoft PaaS, PaaS. So Microsoft Platform Service, we just instantiate and say, you know what? Every time a new company register, just instantiate a CloudShare instance for them and make sure it's always running. It's robust, meaning that if it's running on this, whatever Microsoft is holding on the back end, and that thing is unavailable, just instantiate it on a new thing. So that's kind of how that works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not even a web server or even necessarily server based, because it's more, I don't know what the correct term for these things, but it's almost more like Docker, where it just runs and it's a service and it doesn't even necessarily require an operating system.
Yes, you're right. So we don't deal with operating system. There's nothing to patch. There's no concept of Windows 2000 or whatever. It's all web. We just kind of upload and say, this is our code, run as many instances as you can. And there's a need, let's say we go through a growth like we did last year, just instantiate new threads to handle the load and make sure everything's robust. Yeah. So Microsoft Azure has to be completely down in this case before we'll be in trouble, which it can happen, right? But to the extent that Microsoft is highly available, we run in 2 regions, the platform services is robust and it's actually automatically scales up and scales down as needed. Yeah. So it is not a single point of failure.
That makes me feel better. And because it's Azure based, it's not even in a single location. You've got this thing throughout the country, possibly internationally as well.
So we have our relays all over the world. Wherever Microsoft has an Azure region, we're there. But the backend, the Cloud Shield, runs in 2 data centers in the East US and the West US of Microsoft. And then within each data center, it's actually robust and it automatically scales up and scales down. But the other one is a failover for it. That is the brains. That is actually, connection doesn't go through there. What that is for is to manage the dashboard and the authentication. Once that is done, when you actually make a connection between the endpoint and a remote server, that is handled through different systems, something called a Microsoft Azure Service Bus. The Service Bus is a global service bus, meaning that I can relay connection from here to Japan, from Australia to whatever. The thing that we did, though, for uniqueness is we have an intelligence that will persist the connection within in-country. So if a user is in the United States, I'm an end user, I'm connecting to a server in the United States, all the traffic stays in the United States. If you're a user in Canada, connected to a server in Canada, all the traffic stays there. People love that because of, if you have data residency requirement like HIPAA laws, Canada has a healthcare requirement. So they love that aspect of our technology where a user in Canada connecting to a system in Canada, all the traffic stays in Canada for that regard. So the Cloud Shield is more for the authentication and the logic that tells you how to connect after the fact. I hope I haven't lost you, Steve.
No, I wasn't sure if Brandon was going to say something.
I'm good.
He had one of those deep sighs, and I was like, oh, he's going to correct Peter here.
No.
All right, so I'm going to go completely off topic, but at least this time it's not like a joke or something stupid. What is the difference with what you're doing, like with how you've developed Cloud Shield on Azure versus using something like a Worker on Cloudflare?
I think it's go ahead.
And just so you know, Workers can run Rust, C, and C+, and more on the edge.
Okay. So the best way I can explain it is like we were looking for a technology where we don't have to manage anything in the back. We're just going to be to upload code with instructions, with all the management, connectivity, robustness, redundancy built into it. Okay. And I'm not suggesting that Cloudflare doesn't have that. After all, that's one of the reasons why they succeed, but they're running in some of the data centers like AWS or whatnot. In this case, we wanted to deal directly with a cloud provider. Okay. So Azure gave that to us. Okay. I would say that we're actually branching out to AWS to kind of provide more robustness, but connecting to the Microsoft. So the Microsoft platform services is so robust that beyond the initial platform services and the web service that we need, there are other technology that we're actually leveraging. One of them is called Signal R. Okay. There's something called WebSockets, right? So most VPN connectivity is over IPsec or SSL VPN in this case. we're using something called WebSockets. And we were looking for WebSocket that scale and works with the Azure Service Bus. Microsoft seems to they have done a lot of work to make all the things that we needed, all the tools, all the plumbing that we need to make TruGrid work is already contained within all of the Microsoft ecosystem, the Azure ecosystem. So when we looked at other technologies and what Azure has, Azure seems to be just far more robust with everything we need. And that's kind of why we went with them. So now, could we have built the same thing on Cloudflare? I'm sure we could have, but we may have to develop additional software to complement what we need that maybe Cloudflare doesn't have, right?
Understood.
That's
Completely
kind of
understood.
why we went. Yes, exactly.
So I do like the fact that you mentioned Azure, and I'm sure you've probably looked into Google's cloud as well. I like that you're now probably looking into having redundancy that's cross-platform. That way, if some dummy over at Microsoft puts a semicolon in the wrong place when they do a major update and takes the whole Azure down, you at least have something that's up and running on AWS or Google or whatever. Now, again, this goes back to me maybe not understanding how some of this stuff works. Is it, I'm gonna air quotes, easy to program the agent and the end user agent to say, okay, Azure is down, so now I'm going to check system B?
We're kind of already doing that with our relay.
Okay.
And the plan is when we go to AWS, that's the way we work, right? So right now, after you authenticate, all the initial authentication happens between my endpoint as a user, the Cloud Shield, and the Sentry agent we have at the customers. The agent plugs into Active Directory and handles communication proxy-wise, no open ports. Well, once that's done and I connect, it goes through my closest relay, right? So our relay is already done in such a way that we even built a logic into it now where when we first started, right, we had to place the customers based on where they are to the closest relay. We now release our dynamic relay based on IP location, meaning that if you're in California and you install your agent and you make a connection, we'll know right away, okay, this is your public IP address. This is the nearest relay to you, and we'll ping you right there. But in each data center, each Microsoft data center where we have relays, there are multiple relays in there, right? And there are multiple relays in other, and they're all part of a global set. And the way the system is built is we have something called the signal R is like a broadcasting system where the Sentry will say, I need to make a connection. And our CloudShield will say, here's your nearest relay. However, that relay is down, CloudShield will never send you there. So he said, I need a connection. Oh, you know what? I was going to send you over there, but I'm going to send you to West US 2 instead, because that one is offline. So we have that kind of robustness built in. So the plan is when we go to AWS, those are nodes, and they are, by the way, they're based on Docker nodes. They're all containers, right? So the AWS one, they'll be part of the same global set, and we won't care. If Azure goes down and you make a broadcast request, we'll just send you to AWS. And that's kind of how we plan to do the redundancy across multiple clouds.
That's a really fantastic way to approach this. Mm-hmm. So kudos to the TruGrid team, to whoever thought of the idea. I'll let you give somebody else credit because you already look like a smart guy.
I think I'm just a troublemaker. Honestly, Steve, I just come up with the idea, assuming it can be done. So many of the things that I come up with, I don't do it within logic. I just think about it the way I want it to work for our customers. I think about the simplicity, and I challenge our engineers to go figure it out. And so they're the smart one in that regard. I just think easy. And sometimes they think I'm crazy, by the way. When I say I want to do something this way, they say, but Peter, I said, well, yeah, that's what I want for our customers. And then they will say, well, it's going to take you 2 more weeks. I said, well, we'll deal with 2 more weeks then. And then they'll come back and give me a solution.
So forgive my ignorance, but earlier you mentioned rolling out, new features here and there.
Yes.
So, I mean, you've got a button on a computer and they click on it and then they connect remotely to an RDP session.
Mm-hmm.
What other features do you need, Peter?
You'd be amazed.
We literally, I think we probably get a new feature request every week. I work with a lot of our MSP customers, and no one product is perfect. No one product is going to do everything that everybody wants, but we are sure trying hard to accommodate everybody. And the changes we've made and the upgrades and stuff have just been amazing. And a lot of it comes from talking to our MSP partners, because they are more than willing to share their ideas with us.
We certainly are.
So
let me give an example to, see, you're right. RDP is just, I just want to connect. But when you think about the way people want simplicity, right? And the way they don't want to deal with MFA, you'd be amazed. So we had a request where they were using normal RDP, where you just have a shortcut and you connect to an RDS gateway, which is exposed over 443. So the end users, they love that simplicity. Okay. There was no MFA involved. It's just login and password, talk to the RDS gateway and connect. But for various reasons, they wanted to come to our platform, right? Security, and they're getting rid of an old system. They're acquiring new companies. So they came to us and they say, you know what? We want our customers to have the same level of simplicity. We don't want them to have to provide MFA when they log in, and we don't want to expose anything. Well,
but hold on a second.
Yes.
You said at the beginning of this thing you require MFA.
You got it. So we had a customer that challenged us and said they don't want MFA. So we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and figure out how we're going to do that. Well, Steve, we came out with it. We made your computer becomes your other factor. But
okay. So now they can only connect from the one machine.
That is the shortcut that Brandon was talking about. We came up with that. I told my team, you know what? We got to still have MFA. Tell me how I can do it. We came out with so our implementation, and Brandon, I'll let you talk to that in a minute. Our implementation is such that even if you knew all the IDs that we use and that we capture on that device to make it, it's another factor, whether it's CPU ID, motherboard ID, MAC address or whatnot, don't matter. You can go simulate that anywhere else, it still won't work because of some other sweet thing that we did in the software itself.
Are you essentially generating a 6-digit code every 60 seconds on the computer itself?
No, what we're doing instead is we're using certain ideas that are unique to the device, which, anybody can come up with a simulation to simulate something if they know what we're doing, right? But then the installation itself of our software is unique, meaning that installation has a unique code that's unique to that device that our database has that nobody else will know, and it's actually encrypted. So the only way to actually compromise a client using our shortcut feature is to actually clone the entire computer. You have to clone everything. And when you clone it, the platform you're going to, whether it's a virtualized environment, better not change the hardware ID, because if it does, it won't work. But if you're smart enough to clone it, you're smart enough to simulate all these ideas and represent it there and clone the software, then you could cheat it, right? Just like you're stealing somebody's phone, right? Or you intercept their SMS code. It is that level of complexity.
So it is doable.
It is doable, but how likely is it?
Yeah, and especially because hackers are typically looking for the low-hanging fruit, and that is not hanging very low.
That is not hanging very low at all. Yes. So to answer your question, the question you asked was, what is that? Just RDP. What else could you possibly need, right? That's it. I'll give another example, right? You probably already know this, Steve. Not every MSP has Active Directory. They're customers, right? Some of them just have Azure AD. There's no Active Directory on-premise, right? Okay. Now, you and I know in an Active Directory environment, you have group policies. You can automate things you like, things you don't like. Well, then our customers that don't have AD on-premise for their customers, but they have Office 365, they challenge us and say, look, we want to be able to set the same RDP policies that we could set in a GPO Active Directory environment, right? We built it into our connector software. So when an admin logs into our connector software on the web interface, they can now set GPO policies, okay, RDP policies within our software, regardless of whether they have AD on the background or not. And what that means is that if I'm connecting to a standalone computer in AWS, one in the server room, virtual machine over there, MSP can now implement the same robust policy across the board so that when I connect, If I say user, I'm not allowed to print, printer redirection will not map. If I'm not allowed to copy and paste, that will not work. If I'm not allowed to transfer files, that will not work. And it can be done from a single interface globally for multiple domains, and you could do your own too. It's impressive.
And when you are configuring this, if they do have AD and you configure it from your tool, will it configure AD, or is it still just configuring TruGrid?
It's configuring TruGrid. We're not touching the AD. Yeah.
Now,
because it turns out that Microsoft has all those things in the RDP file, right? That is generated. So we just make sure that when you say those things, our database knows that at runtime, when I'm making that connection, the RDP file that's downloaded for you has all those security features built into it.
So it's just some checkboxes.
You got it. That's what it is.
Cool. All right. Now, you brought up a really great point. There are some people that don't have on-prem AD. So how do we run TruGrid? Not even just how do we configure the RDP GPO stuff. How do we run TruGrid without AD? Because you said it has to be installed on a server with Active Directory.
Exactly. So that's been a long-running request when it first went out the gate. When it first started, like even up until, this year, you had to have AD somewhere. So we had one MSP in Canada that had all of his customers, over 20 or so of them, didn't have AD on premise. And he wanted to use our product. Okay. The only choice he had, I think over about 2 years ago, so maybe 1.5 years ago, was to set up some AD in his own data center. And which is support, because the AD is just for authentication, right? The machines you want to connect to don't have to be joined to AD in this case, because we have a software called Secure Connect, which is a subset of the Sentry, right? So if you have an environment where we're not brokering all the 50 machines on the network, but you want to be able to connect to a standalone machine over there in some server room that's or factory that is a standalone device, we can do that for you. And the way we do that is our Sentry agent, which is the primary agent in AD, a subset of it doesn't require AD. You put that on those machines, and with the same code, they'll report themselves into your dashboard, right? And they will self-broker themselves instead of going through the agent on an AD environment. So this MSP, what they had to do was set up a single AD and use UPN to simulate all the customers. It was able to provide authentication, and each end user was able to connect to their respective office. It worked for him great, and we support it. But then But
it needs to be easier, Peter.
I know. So, and that's why we spend a lot of time to implement support for Azure AD. So his customers, luckily, and many other MSPs, this was one of the most popular demands was, guys, we're okay doing that central AD for multiple customers to start with, but we don't like this idea, right? And as you know, Steve, software iteration. Nobody comes with everything you want on day one, right? That's where software is always evolving, come up with new features and stuff. So we ramped up very quickly. We created support for Azure AD so that now, if an MSP, the customer is in Office 365, which has Azure AD behind it, you don't need AD at all. So each customer will plug into their own Azure, and then you don't even need an MFA. If you already have MFA set up in Azure AD, it would respect that. So when you log in now, you log in as if you log into Office 365, and you see your desktop, and then you make a connection.
I like that.
Yes. Release that. So
all right. So
it's part of being responsive, Steve, to what our customers want. Yeah. Which is the real reason for being, right? Is the whole reason for being is to we solved the initial thing, like you said. The initial, okay, RDP is just to connect. But as Brandon said, every customer is unique. I don't have AD, I have AD. I don't want single sign-on, I want single sign-on. I don't like MFA, but I still need security. And I still want it to be simple. Just a lot of stuff. We have to accommodate them.
So I haven't really let Brandon talk for a long time, and I feel bad.
I wouldn't feel that bad. I'm not the smart guy on the call. I set up the meetings, and so
that's cool. Well, let's shift gears here for a minute. Let's talk about some pricing type stuff. So if an MSP wanted to get signed up with TruGrid, do you guys have minimums or anything like that?
Yeah, the minimum's 10.
Really? That's it?
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many. First of all, when an MSP signs up or wants to sign up, they generally want to test with 10, or if not, maybe sometimes only one. So given the flexibility to start off with only 10 it works out really well. And then they could start off with one customer, and if it works out, they always test with one customer and internally. And so, yeah, starting off with 10 is good. We also give a 14-day trial. So there is some flexibility there too. And then the pricing is mapped out. So when you start off at 10, it's one price. Then as you go up, the system will automatically discount the price as you go up in volume.
What's the starting price when you're at 10?
$12.90.
Is that per device?
Per user. So we go all per user, not per device.
Okay. So we're paying technically for 10 users, and hypothetically we can install this on 1,000 devices as long as those 10 users were the only people connecting.
Correct. Yeah. So that would actually come in more in what we started talking about originally about servicing people. We actually just worked with a company in UK that they do like heat monitoring or something like that in big factories. And he has a group of 10 that are going to be using our product to access a ton of computers. And so that's something that, TruGrid's not going to get rich off that deal, but we are flexible like that to use our product. So,
And I suspect since you don't actually have to spin up real servers, you're just spinning up, enough containers to manage all of the requests. Even if they set it up to run, 1,000 different centuries, I think you called them, that's still not going to cost you a whole lot of money, I don't think.
No.
Like, I don't know how much it costs to run a container versus a server in Azure, but
it's so much cheaper.
I suspect so. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like
that.
So
one user is unlimited. So if you're a licensed user, you can connect to unlimited computers. 110,000, it's up to you.
Okay. So basically the starting price is in the $120, $130 range a month, which it's not terrible. I will say that, for something that's built into Windows, you sure charge a lot for it.
I can justify that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I think you already have, if I'm being honest, Peter. I mean, you gave us a nice list of all these reasons why you're providing like one of, if not the most secure environments to use RDP remotely.
Yeah.
So I'll say that so you don't have to give everyone the sales pitch. I think we understand what value you're bringing here.
So Steve, we had a customer recently switch to us from Citrix, and they actually did get hacked, but that had nothing to do with Citrix. I think it was some in-between stuff they were doing. But when I gave them a proposal, they came back and they were like, how much for your implementation fees? And I'm like, there is none. Like that's it. And then it was just like, we'll sign right now. We'll do it. So the implementation fees that some of these other companies charge are pretty big, and our product is pretty simple to set up. And we don't rarely work with customers over and over again because there's such a problem getting things set up. We generally takes about 45 minutes to get somebody set up. So we don't need to charge implementation fees, but the general public, they don't know that. So service providers, they can charge whatever implementation fees they want or add in service fees every month as well. So a lot of our service providers are charging upwards of $20 for it, sometimes $25 if they're throwing in dark web monitoring for the company as well. So
if one more service provider throws in dark web monitoring, I'm going to lose my mind.
I know what you mean. Yeah. So.
Oh my goodness. All right. So let's expand on that for a moment though. So let's talk about, I'm going to call it a typical use case where it's an actual company reaching out and they're comparing you to Citrix. They may have 1,000 users, right?
Yes.
Probably more, possibly more. But let's look at 1,000 users of Citrix versus 1,000 users of TruGrid. Do you guys know what it costs for Citrix, just the licensing alone?
Yeah.
We just looked it up the other day, actually.
Exactly. They have very complex, confusing pricing, but I can tell you that the minimum is about, for that 1,000 users, it'll be $200,000 a year without implementation. And then the high level of their product is actually 25 times 12. It's about $300 per year per person is about $300,000 just on the licensing side alone. And then you have to pay for implementation, or you have to have the army of engineers on staff to implement it for you.
So I just want to clarify. The first number you said was 20,000, right?
No, 200,000.
That is a lot of money.
Yes.
So I just want to clarify, for that same number of users for a year.
At the TruGrid side. The TruGrid side, if you're MSP.
It's not $12 a user anymore at that point. What kind of price are we looking at 1,000 users?
Before we answer that, Steve.
Sure.
This podcast, is it for
it's
any
just
public?
For MSPs.
Only
MSPs? Anyone can technically listen to it, but
we're always very careful to talk about pricing because we don't want MSP to compete with corporate customers, right?
Well, okay, so let me say this. That 12-ish, is that the MSP price or the corporate price?
That 12-ish is the MSP starting price, but it goes down dramatically. When you're talking about 1,000 users, it's crazy. It's crazy low.
What do you charge corporate-wise for 1,000 users?
It's $15 per user per month.
What do you charge for 10?
The 10 starts at 15. Their discount is not anywhere close to the MSP. So the MSP can always make something around, let me just say about 30 to 40 points off of what the corporate price is, the retail price is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So retail is $15 at 10.
Yes.
And at 1,000, the retail is.
Do you have the pricing table in front of you, Brandon?
I don't. I can pull it up though.
You can look it up for the corporate one. Yeah, we can fully talk about the corporate one because
we can make assumptions at that point because.
Yes. And where you bring that up, so Brandon was talking about us installation. One of our clients, we have one client that has 25,000 seats. Okay,
that's all.
One entity. Yeah, it's we are very happy with them. They were shocked at the implementation of our software. They didn't have to do. There's no like big project and everything else. They already have an existing system in place. They're using Citrix on one hand, they're using RDS over there, and they're using vWorkspace, which has been discontinued. And they were shocked that they were able to use our system to connect to those existing systems without removing what's already in place. So they're actually able to roll out our product for their end users before they tear out the stuff that they don't need anymore. They were just shocked and they were blown away by it. Brandon, do you have the information?
Yeah, $11.34 for 1,000 users.
That's on the corporate level.
On the corporate level. Another thing to think about too, Steve, is that with our corporate accounts, we normally try to get an annual agreement for corporate accounts. So they pay everything up front, where service providers, we don't even ask for that because we know that, well, we're hoping that you're adding more licenses all the time. So we don't even never offer annual deal to MSPs. And there's also no contract too. So you can actually, I don't know if you know, with some products, when you get up to a certain range of licenses,
they all have a high water mark.
Down.
Yeah.
They don't want you to go back down. So,
well, there's one company out there that's notorious for that. It rhymes with no. And what they do is it's called a high water mark. That's a common thing honestly, for a lot of MSP products in the channel right now. They've got high water marks. So, you start off with 50 licenses and then you get up to 150 and then you lose that client that has 100. Well, they won't let you go back down to 50.
And we don't have that problem.
Yeah. So if we look back to Citrix versus TruGrid, so we're talking about $200,000 for the year just in licensing on Citrix and $136,000 for the year in TruGrid.
I think at $11 it'd be, yes, maybe you're all right about that. Yes, I think it's 11 times 12.
Yeah, because 12 times 12 is 144.
Okay, I got you.
So $136,080 to be exact, based on the dollar amount I heard.
Yep.
So what can Citrix do that RDP can't? Because I remember, I'm going back to like 2007 right now. So I'm really starting to show my age, but I kind of fell into being a Citrix admin, and it's because I was the guy who learned the most
Yeah.
about Citrix at this IT company. And I went through and I completely blew away their servers and fixed how everyone was using it, because the guy that was setting it up before, he was like, okay, we've got 5 Citrix servers, and this one runs Goldmine, and this one runs QuoteWorks, and this one runs Microsoft Office, and they couldn't like cut and paste between apps because it was on multiple servers. So I was like, that's stupid. So I blew it all away. I put it on 2 servers, and I installed all the applications on all the servers, and everything ran super great. The staff at that client was happier than they've ever been with our company. Everything went really well. So I remember there being some like really cool features with Citrix. Like back then, they were able to do the all you need to do is click on this and it'll open the application and look like it's on your computer, because Microsoft RDP, or terminal server as they called it back then, did not yet offer that.
We offer that on our product.
Yeah.
Well, RDP offers that too, though.
Yeah.
Now
it's called remote app.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so because I feel like there's a lot more feature parity now between Microsoft and Citrix.
You nailed it.
Why do people want Citrix these days?
So I think Citrix is almost like when you're the first to do something, it becomes synonymous with the way to do it, especially at the enterprise level. It becomes one of those things where nobody ever got fired for buying IBM kind of situation.
Yeah, but okay, I'll see that and I'll raise you. I have my Novell CNA for Network 5.
I know. So maybe the better way to put it is like when something becomes the way things are done. I'll give an example. When you're doing clinical software implementation like Epic, Sonar, all those big guys, they've all come to the conclusion Citrix was the way to do it. And that's because Microsoft RDS didn't offer some of the robustness and some of the management tools that Citrix offers, right? So enterprises have certain needs that are different from SMB. We can actually agree on that, right? So you could argue that Citrix dominated, they've come to dominate the enterprise level. And many companies, as you move from company to company, if you do Citrix over there and you move to another company, naturally you have the experience, you're going to want to, justify your experience and bring Citrix in as well. And so and the fact it's complex is not an issue for large enterprises that can support that level of expense. The challenge really is when it comes to the mid-market. The Citrix is not really winning at all in the mid-market. Most people use RDP, albeit insecurely. That's the problem. There's a group of service providers that are very good in how to set up an RDS farm, but they'll do it, but it has its own complexity. So many don't do it, or they figured out, I can just open at 3389 and you can make a connection, right? So people kind of get away with it. Enterprises would not make that kind of mistake. So, and this is very important for us to say. We didn't develop the software to compete with Citrix, to be honest with you. We developed it to target a whole market that Citrix is not targeting, right? Now, granted, you're going to have some companies in between, just like the one that Brandon said, where they were using Citrix. The reason why they came to us was they had received a quote to replace or to redo their Citrix system, and the consulting was too high. And they were looking for an alternative, and they found us. And they were shocked that there was no implementation cost. We implemented like within a couple of days after talking to them, and they just like what they saw. The remote app is what they're doing, and they realized it has feature parity with what they saw. In fact, they kept their Citrix system around for a couple of weeks just to make sure if it don't meet the needs, it can go back. We did, and they're still using the system. So there's going to be some little cross between when you get to that midpoint between I'm an SMB, but I'm crossing to enterprise. I'm an enterprise. I can't justify the cost of supporting Citrix. I'm looking for something different.
Yeah, they actually accidentally emailed me that Citrix quote. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that their implementation fee was $500 more than our yearly cost that they paid for. So their implementation fee was more than what it was to use our whole product for a year.
This is on top of paying for the license.
Yes, that's on top of paying for the license.
Yes. So, but to be honest with you, Steve, we're not in the market to compete with them.
Sure. But how many users was that?
That was 25 users.
In that particular case. It's a small situation.
But still, I mean, 25 users of Citrix, I feel like is going to be exponentially more
Yes.
when you look at the cost per user versus 1,000, just because there's the user license, but then there's also the server license, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they can expect it to be, let's see, annually alone, $7,500. Implementation would have been around 5,000. So it will cost them about 12,500 in the first year. And whereas with TruGrid, it's about less than 5,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. So the other day I read an article. I just kind of fell into this article, and it was a really interesting article. It basically said IBM started giving their employees the choice. Do you want a Mac or a PC? And over 70%, maybe over 80% chose Mac over PC. And then after several years, they learned that the Mac had a lower cost of operation. So, and that could be from software, hardware, repairs, maintenance, all that, right?
Sure.
So I feel like the world is starting to switch slowly but surely over to Apple computers. And I can't think of, I wonder what the Apple market share is, just because
it's still relatively low to Windows, but I do agree with you that when you go into SaaS, right? If all of the things you're accessing is all SaaS based, whether it's SharePoint, OneDrive, because they have native apps for Mac and Windows, or it's a website that runs your CRM and everything else, there's no Windows server you're connected to run Windows apps. Okay. You are right that it doesn't matter whether I use an iPad or tablet or MacBook or Windows in that case. And I would say, because we're doing some training recently, if you're talking about work from home today, the holy grail of work from where everything's SaaS based in the cloud. The next best is where you have a hodgepodge where some things you have a legacy app that's the Windows based or whatnot, and you have to connect to it through VPN, God forbid, because of the trust issues, or you're doing an RDP or Citrix type solution. And then the worst case is where everything runs on Windows, where there's no cloud implementation and you have to work from home. It has its own issue. So the trend is towards SaaS. And that is actually how I believe that those people are able to get their Mac usage up to that as high as it is because of SaaS mobility.
Well, and I don't know that you answered my question. So
let me try again.
So I guess the question I was going to ask is, at what point does TruGrid start to implement another protocol? Maybe it's just a VNC that's built into Mac.
I got you.
So that way, for the companies that have a Mac Mini at every desk instead of a Dell, and it's actually running Mac OS, how do you implement something else so you can start connecting to Macs remotely?
That's an amazing question. We've done some trending, right? And believe it or not, we haven't received a lot of requests for people that want to remote into their Mac. In most cases, people are using Mac to connect to other things, right? Connect to SaaS, web, services, Windows machines, and whatnot. Now, I'm not saying there could never be a reason why someone wants to be somewhere else and connect to a MacBook that's fixed, waiting for that connection. That's possible. But then the real question for TruGrid, is that a sufficient market? And is that a real big need? Because Apple already has something built into their product that can allow you to kind of connect to Mac. I don't know how secure it is, right? So what we're actually doing, Steve, that's different is our Cloud Shield system already supports multiple protocols. The only thing we're manifesting right now is the RDP. So what we're actually leading is actually to replace VPN completely, because there's some situations, Steve, where people need VPN just to map file shares into their office. They're not really connecting to another Windows machine. They're not RDPing. They're just connecting to, how they map file shares over a VPN tunnel? That's a use case. Or you have a web server behind, in your network. You don't want to expose it to the internet, right? You could use VPN for that. foundation technology already supports those things using our WebSocket services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where we're going is beyond RDP, is to be able to allow our Cloud Shield, this is why I said Cloudflare, to do the same thing that Cloudflare is doing, much simpler for the SMB market, where Cloudflare is more or less, you could say they're focused on enterprise and things of that nature, maybe some high level SMB. But for customers who already know our product, want to just leverage it so that now you can actually connect to file share without VPN tunnel, meaning that there's no trust between this computer and that, and also be able to connect to web services without you having to worry about SSL, being able to put MFA in front of any web services, legacy or not, that doesn't have MFA. You don't have to worry about machinations of trying to figure out touching your IIS and whatnot. You'll just be able to just install TruGrid, and we'll be the broker to your any protocol, SSH, FTP, 443, anything at all. That's where we think we want to go versus trying to allow remote into a Macintosh. Now, if we receive enough requests, because we have to listen to our customers, that they really want to remote into Mac, by all means, we'll definitely open that up.
Well, you just need to do it.
Because you like it, right? Okay.
I think Jason will be on board.
So let me ask you, Steve, do you see a need for you to be in one location? I want to remote into a Mac somewhere else. Tell me, do you have that need right now?
So on the administration side,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be super neato.
I got you.
To have something as secure as what you offer for Mac. I don't know if there are many use cases where end users truly need to remote into a Mac.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, there are definitely examples where I can see people using TeamViewer, Screen Connect, whatever, to connect to Mac, PC, Linux, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that's putting them at the console, like you said. And I don't see a problem with that.
Okay.
Unless they're trying to do like remote printing and some, file transfers. Like some of that stuff is doable, but it may be a little trickier on some of those tools.
Yes.
But most of the tools these days, even if it's just remote control tools, they offer, remote sound and remote clipboard and that kind of stuff to make things a little easier on whoever is using it.
I agree with you. I think it's safe to say as a product company, you can never say never, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to listen to your customers. And we've had a few I can count on my fingers, people have come and say, oh, can I remote into Mac? And I would say, no. Yeah, if we have a, groundswell of requests and your voice carries a lot because you're a public figure here, a lot of people know you. So we'll definitely look into it. We just we want to know a few other things about what the benefits would be, what people like to see. Like you said, you need to remote the sound back beyond just keystrokes and screen, bits. What else would you want to do when you make that connection to a Mac?
I would say that, like, if I'm being truly honest here, I could see a use case for both Windows and Mac where if you started to market to like engineering or designers,
yes,
where maybe they're running like AutoCAD or, some of these bigger where they need something that's going to be quick, snappy, but they also want to make sure that it looks just as good. Now, obviously it might look different because they don't have a, $3,000 completely custom calibrated monitor at home,
yes,
compared to what they've got at work. But, I want the colors and the animations to be smooth and all that kind of stuff to where everything just kind of feels like you are there.
I totally agree with you. That could be something that our CTO, for example, is a Mac guy. He uses Mac. So we have a fan of Macintosh inside, and I'm a Windows guy, but it doesn't matter to me. It's not about me. It's about the customer, really. So we're definitely going to kind of look into that.
And to be completely honest, so if I think about just a Windows computer today, AutoCAD, Photoshop, whatever, right?
Yep.
when I connect via one of these remote control apps, it feels like garbage. And I'm on a gigabit connection.
That's my point. That's why I tell you RDP is very fast compared to TeamViewer and Screen Connect and all these other things. They're workable, but RDP is just, relatively speaking, given the same bandwidth, RDP is much faster.
So is RDP, and I'll say is TruGrid because it's RDP, right? But so is TruGrid able to provide me an experience to where if I'm sitting at my desk here at home, it'll feel like I'm sitting at my desk at the office, minus maybe, like I said, a calibrated screen, or maybe I don't have that little pen stylus thing, or, whatever, right? Yeah. But is it going to feel like that? It's going to be snappy. It's going to be crystal clear. I'm not going to have weird, like, bloop, bloop, bloop.
I use that every day. I use that product every day to remote into some environment that I still like. Our demo environment is in the cloud. So when I'm doing demo, even Brandon, when he's doing demo, I don't even think twice that way I'm logging into. It just feels natural. And if you have any time slot, I can show you what it looks like using TruGrid. It's just straightforward. But I'm also familiar with Screen Connect and everything else. And again, like I told you earlier, it has its place. We're not knocking a product. It's just when you're looking for performance and you want session privacy, RDP is a better solution.
That's and I just want to be clear too. I'm not knocking the other products because for what they're intended for,
yes, they work well.
They do a fantastic job.
I agree.
And if you look at some of the features that Screen Connect has with, like the remote toolbox and the ability to get command prompt access in the background without taking over the end user's console, that kind of stuff. Like, it's fantastic. But if I want to connect to a remote machine and watch a YouTube video or stream something on Netflix
there's enough for that.
to that machine, streaming to my machine and coming out my monitor and speakers here at home, am I able to do that with TruGrid and be like 100% happy with the quality of everything?
You can, but I would say it would never be the same as you were running YouTube locally. So in other words, and the same goes for Citrix, by the way. Citrix always claim that it can do all those things, it can run YouTube and everything else. And here's why.
It's compressing it more.
There's something called physics, right? You can't
go on.
This is new.
Yeah. You cannot ignore the laws of physics, right? So when I connect my browser to YouTube, right, is using the graphics processing that's local on my machine, right? So it's native, right? It is the fastest experience you're going to get, right? When you introduce an emulation where I now connect remotely, yes, Microsoft is able to map through some of my stuff using codec, using remote FX. It will stream those things down and use my local processor. But because there's intervening protocol involved, that would create a little bit of a difference in the local experience. So yes, I've actually done my test. I connect to YouTube in a remote session. I can hear everything crisp, but the sound is good. But if every now and then, when you're watching the frames, you might notice a little, it's not
because it'll skip a couple frames sometimes.
Something like that. I've seen that happen. And just the nature of doing remote access, okay? You try doing that on the other remote control product and you can even try it. So
then what do we need to do? Like how much do you need to throw into your dev team to begin to defy the laws of physics?
I'm glad you asked that. I would just kind of say this. I did have some conversations with the big guys at Microsoft, June 3 years ago regarding that topic when they were launching WVD. And, there was some thing they're trying to do and we're kind of trying to put heads together. It's not easy because especially if they're trying to match the experience of the local GPU, right? It's difficult because you're trying to make something streaming from a unique location. Now, I would tell you this, when you're on a high-speed environment, when you're on a LAN, on a local area network, I've seen that to be, it's not complete parity, but almost.
Why would you have to go to an RDP session to watch a YouTube video?
I think, go ahead. I will give an example.
To answer that question, maybe I'm on a thin client and all we use is RDP to access our actual desktop because the thin client's just a dumb terminal. Okay. It doesn't have an OS. It doesn't have a browser, right? So then we would use RDP to literally do all of our work.
Yeah.
So if I want to, multitask while I'm working, like you've never done it.
Yeah. I had one use case, Steve, where the customer is a healthcare company and all their training material is on YouTube.
That's a legitimate use too. Like all the training, like all the training's a video you stream these days. Who wants to read a manual?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I just literally didn't know. So I'm glad that you guys.
No, yeah.
In this particular case, they were using MP4 files. They're not hosted on YouTube, but they were hosted entirely, and they didn't want to expose it to the internet for their own reasons. And
so here's a question, and now again, I'm getting off topic, but I'm trying to be serious here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these video game systems where you can like basically stream the game from the internet, and so what? Like Steam has it and Xbox has it to where you don't even have to have the Xbox. You can just like log in on the website and have an Xbox controller Bluetoothed to your computer, and you can play an Xbox game basically over the internet. And all the GPU stuff is being handled in the cloud, and all you're doing is like seeing the game.
Yeah.
So if you don't know much about it, then we don't even have to continue the conversation because
I can talk about that.
I was only going to say, like, how is that one different than what RDP and all the other things are doing?
There's a company called Frame. They've been acquired now by Nutanix.
Okay.
And I only know them because of my experience in Citrix World. And I talked to them, and the gentleman that built that company had done exactly what you're talking about, where they try to have GPU servers in the cloud and everything else, and they only kind of replaying the frame to you so that you don't have to actually have everything streamed down to have your GPU do it. There's a combination of a hybrid where they're doing something codec-wise in the cloud, a few things on your desktop, and it gave a much better experience. But even he agreed that it can never be a replacement for what your laptop is doing. But if the goal is to mimic the experience as much as possible, they came very close, and they were acquired by Nutanix. So there'll be use cases for that. And I think, I'll give you an example, Steve. AutoCAD, the other company, Autodesk, they make AutoCAD design. They actually have an explicit language that they don't support RDP or Citrix or any of that. Or they don't support them, period. But then they will now give you a little adjunct to say, well, in case you want to do it though, these are a few things you could do. And they do have some customers that are doing AutoCAD over our TruGrid. And when they came to us, we did some digging. We now have on our website, we have a help.trugrid.com where they can actually find what they have to do according to recommendation from Autodesk to run RDP to run AutoCAD over RDP. And it's working for some of them. So to answer your question, Steve, not everything, like RDP is not, I don't think is designed to replace a very high-end video environment. But if you're doing normal business applications like your normal PowerPoints, Word, Excel, ERP apps, the standard stuff that most people do, it covers that 90% of what most businesses do. If you're an engineering firm that everything you do is high graphics, rendering, everything else, RDP is probably not for you.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if you see it.
I can see it.
I just thought I'd share this just because Brandon was like, what, that exists? So, I mean, it seems really cool. I've never actually done it. I think there are more companies than just Xbox doing this now too. I feel like Steam has a thing.
So it's very possible, Steve, then that this kind of technology could be used to extend to the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. And the best part is, I mean, Xbox is owned by Microsoft. So, maybe they're tweaking it from Xbox and they'll roll something like it out in RDP or in WDS or whatever they call it, where it's the virtual desktops.
And if they do, and they don't secure it very well, we'll be there to help them secure it. Yeah,
you can get hacked at during having an Xbox, can't
you? I've seen that happen.
But you have information on there, credit cards.
Yeah. To answer your question, Steve, the WVD still uses RDP.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that's where it's going to stay. So if they roll out a different technology into Windows to mimic that Xbox Remote Play, for example, if they don't secure it very well, actually very well, the Microsoft is not always at the front end of security. We will be there to help customers secure it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've touched on a lot today, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I know my brain hurts. How about yours, Brandon?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. All right. Brandon, is there anything that you wanted to tell people that I didn't ask you yet?
I wanted to ask you, do you have like a certain group that follows you that you'd like me to put together something for them, a package them to MSPs?
I'm not opposed.
I'm just saying we've done it for other groups in the past and stuff, and we've kind of taken away all of the certain deals and stuff. So we haven't offered your group a deal. So if you have a certain group that you deal with, I can put together something for you with a discounted page and stuff like that if you want to share it with them. So I could offer that.
Yeah, we can talk about that more offline after we're done with the episode. Anything else you wanted to go over?
There's one thing I want to mention. Brandon, if you're okay with it. Even though we haven't talked about it, believe it or not, Steve, the primary reason why people come to us is actually not what you think. You would think is because they would just want to secure RDP because they open up for 3289. Surprisingly, no. The bigger reason that people come to us is to replace VPN.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for a specific need. So because in this day of work from home, pandemic, and everything else, and hybrid work, it turns out that a lot of organizations still have physical pieces in the office that people want to remote to, people that they don't want to buy laptops for them, but they also don't want to put company VPN on home devices that they don't own, right? We've even had customers who came to us after they were breached over using corporate laptops, okay? At home, using VPN to RDP into the office, somehow there's a compromise that happened on the home Wi-Fi that traversed that VPN tunnel and actually ransomed the company. So people are coming to us for that because we don't imply any trust between remote home user, their network, and their remote host in the office. So that is actually the believe it or not, the number one reason people come. We didn't develop the software with that in mind. We didn't know that was a huge use case, but we kind of stumbled on it. And I just thought, if any MSP is listening to us right now, you have customers that are using VPN, hopefully, and they're running RDP with that VPN. Hopefully, they're not using personal devices because that's a very risk. Right? It's a very high risk, and we could actually help with that. So,
well, I'll say this: that VPN tunnels, I'm just so against them anymore these days because of all the implications that come with it from the remote device, not the in-house device. It's the remote device because we have nothing to do with those devices, which also means we don't manage their security.
Exactly.
So there's so many things that could go wrong that it's just not worth it.
The UK company that Brandon was talking about, the energy company, they support multiple facilities. I don't know whether it's I asked them, I said, what are you using right now? They're using VPN. I said, why are you moving away from it? The guy laughed and said, well,
I watched the news.
Yeah. So it's not been talked about much, Steve. It is surprising, but it's there. And so people are waking up gradually to it. So it's the biggest reason.
You know what's funny about these hacks and ransomwares and stuff? And I don't know if this is 100% true with the numbers and stuff. I think I heard it on a TV program or the radio, but T-Mobile just got hacked.
Yes, they did. I just got a text message from them. Hey, it appears that some of your data was released in the hack. How did they? Because I'm going to look.
I heard
T-Mobile has determined that unauthorized access to some of your personal data has occurred. We have no evidence that your credit or debit card information was compromised. We take the protection of our customers seriously. I bet you do.
I'll bet you do.
So I went in, I changed my PIN, I changed my password, and then I realized that they now offer 2FA. So I enabled that using like a Google Authenticator type device, not just text message. I don't do SMS 2FA. I'm not a fan.
I know.
But I went in and I got all that changed right away because reasons. Yeah.
But Bitcoin now got so expensive that the hackers, this is just what I heard on the radio, they want 6.5 Bitcoin.
For what? For which? For
the ransom. So they want to give back part of the data for 6.5 Bitcoin, which I think ends up being like $270,000 or $260,000. But I was kind of just thinking about the Bitcoin thing. I mean, that's the ransom is 6 Bitcoin. Like, really?
You got to think though, man. Bitcoin was like $15,000 higher a few months ago.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
It's at the 46,000.
It was
range.
up to like 75,000, I think.
No, I think it was in the 50s.
Yeah, I see 58.50,
okay.
58.9,
okay,
and 59.1.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't trade Bitcoin yet.
62.63.
Wow.
You're right. It might have been.
I have a cousin that told me he sold Bitcoin at 75,000 a while ago. So, but he might have been exaggerating, or I might have not heard properly. So,
well, the all-time high for Bitcoin is 63,729 and 50 cents.
It's still very high.
So it's still incredibly high. It's almost 20,000 more than what it is right now.
Well, Bitcoin dropped in price because the government was able to recover some Bitcoin from the Colonial Pipeline hack.
I know.
They were able to recover it. So that basically took away, I mean, pretty much the whole reason for people to own Bitcoin.
I think people forget it's a public ledger just because I don't know the name behind those numbers. But if you give me your wallet to put money in and FBI knows your exchange, maybe they can put a court order and say, this is this. I don't care whether it's Brandon, but I know this is Brandon's wallet ID, and this is the exchange that you use. A court order can compel them to give the money in your wallet to FBI. I don't know what they will do. Those are the things that people have to keep in mind.
So you're saying there's a ledger that's public record on Bitcoin. So
for crypto in general.
Yeah. So what you're saying is if somebody sent me 10,000 Bitcoin right now, and then I decided I want to diversify this into a bunch of different wallets, then they might not know it's me, but they'll know that there was 10,000 transferred to this wallet, and then it was transferred to all of these other wallets.
Yes.
Sounds like you've done this before.
They will see all those transactions. Yeah.
I've watched Swordfish once.
Yes.
I like that movie.
Those are all public ledger. Yeah. So because people can see it. Just because you can't do anything with it or you can't snap it doesn't mean it's not the public ledger, right?
Huh.
What we don't know, what you and I don't know, is what legal power behind the scene, FBI, Justice Department, they all have in compelling exchanges that are, if you're not using offline wallet, if your wallet is on an exchange, we don't know, and I'm not professing to know, because that's the only way I think FBI could have taken part of the money that Colonial paid. It's almost like advance warning. So if I'm Colonial and I told FBI, this is the wallet they asked us to pay into, and FBI say, okay, who's the exchange behind this wallet? And they're able to use the Justice Department power with foreign countries to put their hands on it. That could be one way.
It's just interesting. This is the first time they actually retrieved money back, from all the other attacks that have happened. So I think it's good they can get it back.
I agree.
Probably because this is an outfit that was hacked that has huge consequences on the U.S. economy. Because when they're shut down for that week or so, there were beginning to be lines around the country in the southern part of the country, Texas and a few other states. And the United States, wherever the government is in power, wouldn't want to, be taken to the laundry for that happening across the board. So they had to step in and do something about it. Same thing with power infrastructure and all whatnot. The government didn't launch into action when small businesses have been hacked all over the place. It's only when they started touching infrastructure. Yes.
That sounds like the government.
Yes. That's
when you're messing with their money.
Yes. That's just the way. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you can see Colonial Pipeline has, it's actually the largest oil pipeline company in the United States. So when they got hacked, the government has to sit up and take notice. JBS Food was hacked. And so,
look at the price of steak now at the grocery store.
What's driving that?
I don't know. I thought it was from that hack and some other things now too. But
so I don't profess to know too much about Bitcoin, but being a public ledger, people should not be deluded that all the transactions are private. We don't know what power the U.S. government has in trying to go after the exchanges themselves. So a little distraction for Steve, what we're talking about.
Let's go back to the beginning of that, though. Does anybody know how T-Mobile got hacked? Do you guys know how I didn't hear how they actually got hacked.
I don't know the answer to that now.
Okay.
They don't. So think about it. All these companies are reticent to want to tell you they're showing their weakness. So usually when these things come out, there's usually a leak. Somebody who's part of the, forensics or trying to recover may leak the information to people. So most people will not willingly tell you how they got hacked. So Steve, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, everything's getting hacked, man.
That's why we're here, man. At least trying to prevent your computer from being hacked over RDP, at least. So over VPN. So we're doing our part, Steve. What can I say?
Well, I gotta say, I appreciate you guys for everything that you're doing for the community. I appreciate you guys coming on here and having this conversation with me. I like I said earlier, my brain hurts because for once in a while, I bring a bunch of tough questions and not a whole lot of screwing around. And today was question time.
Yes. Did we deliver? Did we answer your questions?
100%, man. I'm very happy with the answers. MSPs, I'd say that, Peter, are you familiar with Total, TODYL?
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with them, yes.
So if you don't have a need for the full-blown VPN-like experience of Total, and you just have end users that need RDP and that's it, you should see what Peter and his team over at TruGrid have to offer.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for being on here, and I will hopefully see you soon after you implement Mac OS support.
Thank you so much. And thanks for what you do, Steve. We appreciate it. Actually, very good for the community. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks,
Take care,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.